Hello friends, very good evening. Welcome to the Hindu analysis. So first article of the day, op-ed article from page number 6, PMLA verdict and erosion of constitutional buffers. Very important, useful article from your UPSC point of view. In your syllabus, it comes under General Studies paper 2. So recently Supreme Court delivered a verdict upholding PMLA, Prevention of Money Laundering Act amendments, the amendments made to this particular act in the recent few years, and Supreme Court defended them. So it has defended all the amendments made to this particular verdict. So this verdict is an erosion of constitutional buffers is what the author is saying. What is a buffer? Buffer is something that offers you protection. Constitution gives some buffers to people like your fundamental rights, and this verdict is leading to an erosion of such constitutional protections or buffers is what the author is saying. Why? Let's look at it in a detailed manner. So he starts by saying India's criminal justice system is based on certain principles. What are those principles? Certain ideas. Look at those ideas. First thing, very important, you have to make note of these things. A person is presumed innocent until proven guilty. Whenever you are making some accusations on a person, whenever a police person is charging a person, so you should not treat him as guilty, you should treat him as innocent until proved by police as guilty, which means the burden of proving this person as a criminal is on the police. The police has to prove that this person is actually criminal, which means the police have to submit evidence, they have to produce witnesses, and the court should be convinced. Only then you call this person guilty. Until then, he is presumed to be innocent. This is principle number 1 that we follow in India. Second one, a person detained on suspicion of having committed an offence would be entitled to bail pending trial. Very important. Because he is assumed to be innocent until proven guilty, he should be entitled to bail until the trial is over. Trial means that investigation that happens in the court. All these arguments that happen in the court, the prosecution, the entire procedure, until it is over, until the court delivers its judgment, he should be presumed innocent, hence he should be entitled to bail. So that is why in India we say bail is the norm and denying it is the exception. Only in the exceptional situations, exceptional conditions, we must deny bail, otherwise we should give bail. That is the norm in India. Third one, a criminal law should not be, whenever you see ought not, you can replace, whenever you see ought to, you can replace it with should not be retroactive. So what is the meaning of this word retroactive? Which means taking effect from a previous date, which means you cannot bring a law today and make it effective from a previous date. For example, a person has committed a crime last year. But in India, there was no law to arrest at that point. A no law which makes it a crime at that point. So you cannot bring a new law today and make it effective from a previous date. Are you getting it? It can only be prospective. Criminal law in India can only be prospective and not retroactive. So, right? Let's take an example. Last year, you did a crime. Someone did a crime. But in Indian law, at that point, there was no punishment for it. Now this year, you are coming out with a new law. Which punishes the same crime. So this new law can be effective only from today. So from today, anybody commits the same crime, you can punish. But you cannot make this new law effective from last year and then punish the last year's crime. That is the meaning of cannot be retroactive. If it is retroactive, you can you can make it effective from this date and punish the person who committed this last year. Criminal law, you cannot do it. Civil law, you can do. Any law with respect to taxation, property rights, etc., you can make it retroactive. But criminal law, in Indian system, you cannot make it retroactive. It has to be prospective only. Very, very important thing. And next idea that our criminal justice system is based on is a person accused of an offense must be informed, very important, of the charges made against him. He must be informed. So the police must show FIR. FIR is the first information report. It has all the charges of the criminal. He has the right to see FIR. Right? So these are some basic fundas. And finally, a suspect has a privilege against incriminating herself. Very important point. What happens generally, police arrest a person and puts the person through torture and forcibly make him confess the crime. Forcibly make him accept that he has committed a crime and record his sentence, record his statement, and then they try to produce in the court. What happens in Indian context? This self-incrimination is not valid. Self-incrimination means you are testifying against yourself. It can be done under force also, right? That is the reason the judge asks the person in the court of law, have you really committed the crime? And you have every authority, you have every right to say no. You have every right to say no in the court of law. Very, very important. So whatever the police might have done by forcing you will not work in the court until you confess in the court itself. The confession has to be made in front of magistrate or the court or the judge, not in front of police under the force. So that is the reason we have a privilege against incriminating oneself. Our fundamental rights protect us. Police cannot force us to confess. They cannot torture us. They cannot force us to confess. So this is what it is. So why is he talking about all this? Today, each of these principles is consumed by exceptions in PMLA. In the PMLA verdict, the court has allowed all these things. So if someone confesses in front of Enforcement Directorate that he has committed a crime and ED has recorded it, ED can produce that as evidence. So self-incrimination is valid, first thing. Second thing, here police have to show FIR, but ED, Enforcement Directorate, they need not show ECIR. They have something called ECIR, which is an internal document. They need not show it to the accused. Another exception. And then, if you see, normally a person is presumed innocent until proven guilty, but in PMLA cases, the person is presumed guilty until proven innocent, and the burden of proving himself as innocent falls on the person himself. So he has to prove that he is innocent. This is called reverse burden of proof. Very important point. So I will explain it once again. So this is the person, normal case and PMLA case. In normal case, this person is treated as innocent and the police have to prove that he is guilty. Police have to prove that he is guilty. But in PMLA case, this person is presumed. So in PMLA case, this person is presumed to be guilty and he must himself prove that he is innocent. So the burden of proof, we call it burden of proof, is on the person himself. That is why we call it reverse burden of proof. In general, the burden of proof, the burden of proving that the person has committed a crime is on the police. But here, this person has the burden on himself. He needs to prove himself to be innocent. Until he proves himself to be innocent, he is treated as a criminal. He is treated as criminal. So these are the issues here. And normal conditions, the person is allowed or entitled to bail. But here there are twin conditions for bail. So this article talks about twin conditions for bail. So there are certain conditions to be fulfilled, otherwise bail is not given. In general, bail is norm. The magistrate always tries to give bail unless there is very strong situation, strong circumstances that he should not give. But in PMLA cases, there are conditions. We will look at all those conditions now. So this is the situation today. This is the situation today. So in today's the recent Supreme Court judgment, we are seeing these erosion of values on which Indian criminal justice system is built. We have seen it again and again, right? So this erosion of values has been given the Supreme Court of India's primatur. What is the meaning of primatur? It means official license. The Supreme Court itself has given a license. It has allowed, it has upheld, it has defended the particular law and its amendments. What is the case about? Vijay Madan Lal Chaudhary versus Union of India. The verdict was delivered on 27th July. It was a 3-judge bench. So let's look at what happened in this. First of all, if you look at the law, it is all about money laundering. What is money laundering? It refers to the process through which the proceeds from a criminal activity. Suppose you are doing some criminal activity like drug trafficking or some other income tax evasion or something, and you are trying to conceal the source. And you are trying to make it look like an legitimate money. So a dirty money, you are trying to show it as pure money or clean money. That is why you call it laundering. Laundering means cleaning. Money laundering. You are trying to show dirty money as clean money. So you get money from illegal activities and you try to put it in this financial system, in the economic system, using various means. So in my last class, in my last editorial, last Hindu analysis, I described what is money laundering in a detailed manner. Please take a look at it. So from mid-1980s, countries around the world began to see a need to introduce special legislation to curb and punish this process. Money laundering has international consequences because the money sometimes goes out of the country and it can be used to fund terrorism in other countries. That is why it has transnational consequences. So countries across the world from mid-90s, they came together, they formed something called FATF, Financial Action Task Force, and finally decided to create a legislation to curb, means control and punish this particular process. That is how PMLA came about in India as well. So in PMLA, Prevention of Money Laundering Act, what is the definition? You have to define the crime, right? It was defined in section 3. So let's not look at the entire definition. If you want to go through the definition, it is clearly there. But the main point in the definition is proceeds of crime. It is all about where this proceeds of crime is going. What is the meaning of proceeds of crime? The money that you are getting by doing a criminal activity. So we are concerned what you are doing with this proceeds of crime. And this phrase is separately defined to mean property, very important, that is obtained out of the commission of a crime relating to a scheduled offence. So there are certain offences mentioned as a schedule to PMLA Act. So that schedule mentions around 30 different, it talks about an array of breaches means violations, under 30 different statutes, means different laws. So all these crimes which are based on 30 different laws are called scheduled offences, and the money that you are getting out of this scheduled offence is the proceeds of the crime. And if you are trying to convert this into white money, if you are trying to convert this into illegal money by applying various means, then you have committed the crime of money laundering. This is the story here. And these scheduled offences, I hope you have understood the concept of scheduled offences. For this PMLA Act, there is a schedule, separate schedule which is annexed. In that schedule, there are certain crimes listed. If you are getting money out of those crimes and you are trying to convert that money into pure money or clean money, then you are committing a crime of money laundering. So these scheduled offences can be murder, extortion, kidnapping, immoral trafficking, or some minor things like copyright infringement, trademark infringement. Any of them can be part of your schedule. All of them are part of your scheduled offences. Some of them are big, some of them are minor offences. So money laundering can emanate out of minor offence also. So in this judgment, Vijay Madan Lal Chaudhary judgment confirms what should have been obvious on a bare reading of the law. What is that? It's a very, very important aspect. So take a look. Although the offence under the PMLA is a separately prosecutable one, unless the proceeds of the crime relate to a scheduled offence or what is also described as a predicate offence, no case can be made out under this statute. If a person is ultimately acquitted or discharged in a case concerning the predicate offence, the charge under the PMLA can no longer be maintained. Very important point. See, I'll explain this. So today you have a crime, you have a scheduled offence. This is also called predicate offence. This can be, let's say a person has been accused of doing drug trafficking. So this is the prime offence, which is also called predicate offence. Why is it called scheduled offence? Because it is part of the schedule. Now he got some money out of this. This money he tried to make it legal. So this process is called money laundering. Now because he tried to make this illegal money legal, so he is booked under money laundering case. Now the court is saying this particular case, for this to exist, he must have committed a crime. What is that prime crime? Drug trafficking. So drug trafficking has a separate law. So the court is saying, if in the court of law he wins the case, the person wins the case, and the charges of drug trafficking are struck down, then there is no money laundering case also, because this money laundering case is based on the predicate offence. If the main offence is struck down in a court of law, then this is gone. So for this case to exist, first of all there has to be a case on him. The primary case has to be registered on him. The primary case has to be registered on him. If this case is struck down, this also gets struck down. This is the only positive thing protecting the individual in this particular act, in this particular judgment. Have you understood? That is why he mentioned this is the only silver lining, the only positive thing in this particular judgment. Otherwise, everything else is restricting the liberty of the person. This is the situation. This is the situation in this particular judgment. The most important point the author is trying to talk about in this particular op-ed is this particular thing, bail conditions. Bail conditions. I spoke about twin conditions of bail, right? Look at this. There is a section called section 45. In this section, there is a provision for twin conditions for bail. So a person, if he has to get bail, he must satisfy twin conditions. What are the twin conditions? Let's look at it. Before that, so there is the prosecutor is allowed a hearing before the bail is granted. Very, very important. Before the bail is granted to the accused, the prosecutor, in any case, you will have two people, right? One is a prosecutor, the other one is a defense lawyer. So this is a person who is an accused. Now the person who tries to defend him is defense lawyer. The person who tries to prosecute him is prosecutor. So before the magistrate gives bail to this accused, prosecutor must be informed and prosecutor should have a say. So he should have a hearing. He is allowed a hearing, which means it has to happen in front of him. He must be present. He must be present. And the clause also talks about two conditions. What are the two conditions? First of all, the court should be satisfied that there are reasonable grounds for believing that the accused is not guilty of the offence. The judge should believe that the person is not guilty, and judge should have a reason why. The judge should be able to say why you think he is not the one, why you think he has not committed the crime. So there has to be reasonable grounds which gives confidence to the judge that this person has not committed a crime. First thing. Second thing, that he or she is not likely to commit any offence while on bail. If you give bail, and the judge must be convinced that he will not do any crime, he will not commit any offence. Only when the judge is satisfied that these two conditions, with these two conditions, he will give bail. So judge will feel, why to take risk? Let's put him in bail. Let's put him behind bars. Are you getting it? So that is the reason most of the cases the judges don't give bail. These two conditions have to be satisfied. The judge must convince himself that he will not do any crime if he is out on bail. First condition is okay, but second condition is okay, but the first condition, it is very important. There has to be reasonable ground. There are reasonable grounds that this person has not committed the crime. Only then the judge will grant bail. So it makes it very difficult for bail to come in such cases. Very, very important point. First of all, let's look at the history of this bail condition. How did this bail condition came into being? In its previous version, prior to the amendment made in 2018, there was an amendment made. Prior to that, before the amendment was made, the law classified the predicate offences in the schedule into two categories. Very, very important. So I spoke about predicate offences, right? There is a schedule. The offences mentioned in the schedule are also called predicate offences. The law categorized these offences into two categories. One category, minor offences with less than 3-year jail term. Other category, major offences with more than 3-year jail term. This is how it categorized it. For the crimes, for the offences with more than 3-year jail term, twin bail conditions were put. Twin conditions of bail were put. For offences with less than 3-year jail term, no conditions. These conditions were not there. Are you getting it? Earlier, before 2018 amendment, this is how the law classified the offences. This is how the law classified the offences. And in this particular case, Nikesh Tarachand Shah versus Union of India, a 2-judge bench declared this version unconstitutional. This particular bench declared this version classifying offences into two categories, major and minor. Major will have twin bail condition, minor will not have any condition. This provision has been declared unconstitutional by this particular bench. So then what happened? After that, Parliament chose to delete the classification because this classification was declared unconstitutional by the court. Parliament deleted the constitution in his 2018-19 amendment. It deleted the classification and imposed through section 45 the twin conditions for all offences. Earlier, twin condition for bail was there only for major offences and not for minor offences. The earlier judgment declared that this classification is wrong. So Parliament chose to delete the classification altogether and made all offences conditional on these two conditions. For all these offences, bail is conditional on these two situations. So it has made it tougher compared to earlier version. That is how it is now. Now the Supreme Court held that the judgment in Nikesh Tarachand Shah did not obliterate the provision and the Parliament was entitled to revive the law by deleting its defects. So today's judgment says, the recent judgment says, Parliament has a right to delete the defects pointed out by the court of law and then make it again. So it has upheld whatever Parliament has done. It has upheld the amendments made by the Parliament. What is the amendment? It deleted those provisions altogether and made twin conditions for bail mandatory for all offences. There is no classification now. The court is saying the only flaw highlighted in this particular case was the classification, and now which had now been removed by the Parliament. So this is what it is. The problem here, look at it. This twin conditions for bail make it almost impossible to get bail, which means it is an attack on personal liberty. If you are denied bail, your liberty is gone. You will have to stay. You don't have freedom to move. You are losing your freedom of movement. It is an attack on your personal liberty, which means your fundamental rights are infringed. The court says fundamental rights can be infringed. For example, there is a criminal who has murdered a girl. Will you think of his fundamental right or will you put him behind bars? You will put him behind bars. but the case has to be so strong. The offense has to be so strong. Now the court is saying money laundering is equivalent to terrorism. If a person has committed acts of terrorism and the person has committed acts of money laundering, you have to treat them equally. So it is as big a crime as terrorism. So let's not worry about fundamental rights. Let's put him behind bar and let's make bail very difficult to come by. That is how the court is thinking. Unfortunately, there is one aspect. First of all, there are some predicate offenses. I told you about predicate offense, right? So your money laundering case to sustain, it has to have a predicate offense. Without this, you will not have this case. If you look at these predicate offenses mentioned in the schedule, they are very petty crimes also. Look at from the discharging of pollutants under Environmental Protection Act. If you are discharging a pollutant under Environmental Protection Act, again, this is a small crime. But and you are making money out of it, and that money you are laundering, Money Laundering Act, that is equated to terrorism. But the predicate or the base offense is a small offense. Applying for a false trademark, again a small offense. I am not saying they are not offenses, they are offenses, but they are small offenses. If there is an act, if there is a very small offense, and based on this you are doing money laundering and you are equating this money laundering with terrorism. First of all, this act itself is a very small act. Now you think the base offense is a very small offense, but you are equating this money laundering with terrorism. That is what the author is saying. So our fundamental rights are being breached. There is a breach of fundamental rights here. That is why he is also referring to K.S. Puttaswamy versus Union of India case, the famous Aadhaar case. This case is referred to as Aadhaar case. You all know about it. We all know about this Aadhaar case, right? K.S. Puttaswamy versus Union of India. So in this particular case, Supreme Court made some interesting comments. Look at this. Any invasion of a constitutionally guaranteed freedom must satisfy a test of proportionality. Very, very important. Fundamental rights are very, very important. First of all, if state wants to impinge upon these rights, which means state wants to violate these rights, then it must satisfy test of proportionality. Very, very important. Test of proportionality. This meant that every time the state impinged on a right, it had to show, among other things, that there existed not only a rational nexus between the law made by it and the objective at stake, but also that it had satisfied itself that there were no less invasive means available to achieve the same aim. So I will make you understand this. The government has an objective or aim. In this particular case, we have to control money laundering. This is the goal or aim of the objective, aim of the government. To achieve this objective or aim, now the government is coming out with a law. And this law is infringing upon the fundamental rights. This law is infringing upon the fundamental rights of humans by denying bail, by putting very strict conditions for getting bail and all these things. So they are infringing upon fundamental rights of people. Now what is test of proportionality? First thing, the objective and law must be linked. Without any linkages, you cannot make a law. So this law must have a very strong objective. First thing. Second thing, the government must prove that there are no other means of achieving this objective. To reach this goal, this is the only way. There is no other way which is less invasive, which means invasive means something that intrudes into your personal space. Are you getting it? Something, let's like government does something and it violates your fundamental right. That is invasive. So as much as possible. So if there is any other way to achieve this objective without violating the fundamental rights of people, you must choose that way and not the one which violates the fundamental rights of the people. So that is the objective here, and the government must prove to the court, or the court must satisfy itself that there is no other way without violating the fundamental rights that this objective is achieved. So that is what it is in K.S. Puttaswamy case. That is the test of proportionality, and all these grand principles championed there have failed to translate into genuine constitutional advancement. Nothing happened. Those principles were mentioned, but governments continue to violate fundamental rights of people, and the personal liberty has increasingly come to be seen as pettifogging irrelevance. It is seen as something irrelevant. We don't need to care about liberty of people. That is how governments have become. There is no need to look at these things. That is how governments have become now. Then they are not giving importance to personal liberty. It is being seen as something irrelevant. They are coming out with laws which infringe upon the fundamental rights of people. Second article of the day, representation all the way up, from page number 7. Another op-ed article, again GS 2. It's about our newly elected president Draupadi Murmu. She was an ST woman. From being an Adivasi woman to the president of India, her journey was possible due to these constitutional reforms, due to some of the constitutional reforms that we were able to bring. So that is the main crux of the article. So let's look at all the salient points mentioned here. So this lady Draupadi Murmu is the first person belonging to scheduled caste community and the second woman, right, to occupy the highest constitutional post. She is also the youngest person to be elected as the president and the first to be born in independent India, which means she was born after 1947. First born in independent India. Some simple factual information. She was an MLA of Odisha representing Rai Rangapur for 2 terms between 2000 and 2009. She went on to serve as governor of Jharkhand between 2015 to 2021. So this remarkable journey from Rai Rangapur to Raisina Hill, where your Rashtrapati Bhavan is located, may not have been possible without the reforms that we have brought in. What are the reforms? The reforms that institutionalized representative local governments, because this lady started her career as a councillor in the local government, just because where she was elected from a ward reserved for women from ST communities. That ward was reserved for women from ST communities, and she began her political career as a councillor from that ward. Because it was reserved, she got an opportunity to contest and she became a councillor. Then she became an MLA, she became governor, now she became Rashtrapati, or the President of India. If she did not get an opportunity to start her career as a councillor, if there was no reservation, where would she be right now? That is the reason author is talking about the constitutional reforms at the grassroots level, which means village panchayat and municipality level, which allowed reservation for SCs and STs as well as women. He talks about all of that. So in December 1992, our parliament passed 73rd and 74th amendments that mandated the creation of democratically elected panchayats and municipalities. Yes, local self-government panchayats and municipalities came into picture. The amendment sought to devolve rural and urban local governments with functions, funds and functionaries. So the amendment wanted the state governments to devolve, which means, what is the meaning of devolution? Devolution means share funds, share functions, sharing of powers between state government and local self-government. Share some funds, share some functionaries means people, share some functions means responsibilities, and enable them to function as institutions of self-government. They should be able to govern on their own to meet the stated ends of economic development and social justice. That is how, by enabling these local self-governments, we will be able to achieve our economic development and social justice. That was the objective of coming out with 73rd and 74th Amendment Acts. But whether they really became self-governing or not is a different issue. Today there are multiple issues. State governments are not giving enough funds to local self-governments. They are not allowing them to function independently. There are multiple issues. But one thing good about these amendments is they mandated the reservation of seats in elected councils of panchayats and municipalities to members belonging to the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes based on their percentage population in the jurisdiction, and a minimum of 1/3 seats for women. Very, very important. Minimum 1/3 seats should be allocated to women, and SCs and STs should get allotment based on the percentage of their population. So this is a very significant feature of the amendments. Although they could not achieve complete self-government at local level, but one positive sign is they were able to mandate reservation of seats in the councils, elected councils. The amendments also mandate the reservation of seats for chairpersons of panchayats and municipalities also, not just as a councillor, and chairpersons and of panchayats and municipalities also have reservations for SCs, STs and women. And it enabled states to reserve seats for members of backward classes. One beautiful thing about this reservation is intersection of more than one marginalized identity. On one hand, SCs are suffering or STs are suffering. On the other hand, you have women who are suffering. So women across castes are marginalized. They are not in the mainstream of things. And SCs and STs are not in the mainstream of things. When you talk about intersection, add a plus sign. So the reservation of SC women, ST women, OBC women, such things are called intersection between two marginalized communities, two marginalized sections. Such a quota system acknowledges the aggravated discrimination and disadvantages people face due to the intersection of multiple ascriptive identities such as gender and caste. What is ascriptive? Ascriptive is something that you get from birth, something that is ascribed to you. Very, very important word. Look at these two words, ascriptive and achievement. Achievement talks about your effort. You might have been born into a poor family, or an SC family, or ST family, or a woman, or as any other, or a disabled person. But with your effort, you will achieve something. Those things are called achievement. Ascriptive means something that comes with birth, like your caste, your gender, etc. And these ascriptive values, especially in India, have certain disadvantages. Being a woman in India has certain disadvantages. Being a scheduled caste, being a scheduled tribe person, have certain disadvantages like discriminations in India. Now, by giving this kind of allocation like SC women and ST women and OBC women, this quota system is acknowledging these discriminations and disadvantages. And finally, these amendments provide a platform for Dalit and Adivasi women who have hitherto been underrepresented. Because of these amendments, these Dalit women got an opportunity to participate in political and social life, but to participate in local elections and hold public office and rise in the field of politics. That is how they were able to rise. Okay, so very, very important. So whether these local governments succeeded in becoming truly self-governing is a different issue, but they have really succeeded in broadening the representative character of Indian state by increasing the total number of elected representatives and diversifying its constituents. Total number of elected representatives from these communities have gone up. especially in local self-government. In fact, states have gone beyond the mandate of amendments and increased the reservation for women and introduced reservation for OBCs. Beyond the constitutional mandate, the state governments have increased reservation for women and also they've introduced reservation for OBCs as well. Because of these kind of reforms, because of these kind of actions by the state as well as the constitution, today we are able to see an ST woman becoming the President of India. President of India. So he talks about certain issues with respect to Supreme Court. You can go through this. So not so important from the context of the editorial, that is some additional information. There is one thing that although you are giving reservation to women, but generally husbands decide everything, women are just proxies. There is one such criticism. But empirical studies have shown that women-led panchayats invest more in public goods, prioritize infrastructure, more relevant for women, and increase women's involvement in village affairs. So, women-led panchayats have done better is what they are trying to show here. Empirical studies means studies via observable facts. And some critics have dismissed the appointment of President Momo as a mere tokenistic measure. Just that BJP wanted to show that we are doing justice to STs, that BJP has made an ST woman a president. So they were trying to get the votes of STs. They were trying to go closer to STs. That is the reason BJP is doing all this. Otherwise, they were not interested in improving the plight of Adivasis, and it will not help improve the plight of Adivasis. That is what some critics are saying. But if you look at Murmu, she, while as a governor, used her gubernatorial discretion. Gubernatorial means related to governor. Governor has certain powers. Used her discretion to return the amendments to the Chota Nagpur Tenancy Act. This was an act introduced by Raghubar Das government, which is BJP government in Jharkhand, and it tried to allow the state to make commercial use of Adivasi land. The government tried to make commercial use of Adivasi land. For that, they introduced this particular act, and this lady rejected it. She was not a rubber stamp governor. While it remains to be seen how President Momo will use her office, her appointment underscores the far-reaching possibilities that measures for diversifying representation at the grassroots can have on the top. Whether she will do justice as a President of India, whether she will be able to do great things as a President of India, remains to be seen. But because of the constitutional reforms that we brought in at the grassroots level, because of the diversification of representation at the grassroots level, we have seen the far-reaching possibilities. We have seen a woman from a tribal community becoming the President of India. All this was possible because of this grassroots democracy and the constitutional reforms at the grassroots level. That is how we were able to do all of them. Very, very important.